Well, we are bang on time, so let's dive in. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Second session of day 2. We are off to the races, and we're sort of pivoting hard from very deep dive into technology to something very different. So I don't want to waste any time at all. Just a reminder that the session recordings are going up about 2 hours after each session. So if you want to recap, share it with your colleagues, whatever it is, you're able to do that by the end of the day. But with all of that said, thank you so much for joining us. Kurt, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And appreciate I only have 30 minutes to share something that's hopefully of value. First and foremost, if you want your camera on, that's great. I seem to be more comfortable, ironically, not having cameras. Usually I'm a bit intimidated by the blank boxes. So I'm going to leave it to you, but I will encourage you to think about putting your cameras on, because we're going to be as interactive as we possibly can in this, which means that I'm going to encourage you to share thinking, and I'm going to encourage you to chat with each other in breakout rooms. So at that point, you might want to sort of like reveal yourself and say hello to the people that are in the room with you. I'll probably put you in groups of sort of 3 or 4 to allow you that social awkwardness, where one person, if they feel they need to be quiet and things like that, they can, whereas the others who want to kind of engage in open conversation can do that as well. Also, just to say up front, I don't use this platform that often, so there might be a bit of clunkiness while I get through some of the things, but that's fine. It's just part and parcel of this. So let's get ourselves going. So if I can just get some indication in the chat function that you can see my opening slide deck, that would be great. And just to get that easy, brilliant, that's what we like. And also, can I get in the chat function just a score out of 10 in terms of where your energy is at? 10 is I'm full of energy and I'm raring to go for the rest of today. And 1 is I've used all of my spoons already and I'm out of energy and I need to lay down. So let's see where we're at. Fantastic. We've got some good scores. A solid 6. Thank you for that. Oh, Charlotte. Right, we need to keep an eye on Charlotte. She's challenged with a 2. Which means that there's probably lots of other things going on for her. Okay, so into the content. This, I suppose, workshop, this session is all about taming the wickedness of learning. It's something myself and Laura, who's on this call, a colleague of mine, have kind of like debated and talked about for some time, which is how do we solve this problem? And is it actually solvable? And we found a way that helps us. So it's not the answer, but it's an answer. It's something that can help us. So the strapline being harnessing ASRI, which is our model for sort of learning, design and delivery. So we'll share how that might be able to help in terms of taming this wickedness. So what this 30 minutes is about is the tale of 3 truths that I found when it comes to learning. So the first of them is forgiveness, the second is awareness, and the third is action in terms of what we can actually do about things that we know. I'd like you to consider this comment: why might learning be flawed? And just take a moment to yourself to have a think, and I'm going to leave a quiet period while you have a think about this, and then I'm going to ask you to share. So if we just go with a quiet moment, why might learning be flawed? Okay, armed with your own thought in your head, so before it's influenced by other people's perspectives, I'd like you to get yourself ready next to the keyboard to write your responses in the chat function. So please now start committing your views to the chat. Why might learning be flawed? Let's have a look. It's human and messy and it's fun. It's hard to cater for everybody. Difficult because it's ever evolving. Craig Dower's got values and beliefs for sure. That's a big impact in terms of different standpoints, in terms of we might have different views on what learning actually is. It's hard to evidence. Thank you. We're often making it up, Tom. Yes, sometimes we are. Sometimes we are. With best guesses and informed kind of choices. But yeah, sometimes we're still plugging the gap with some of the things. And this feeds into some of that wickedness of learning. Raymond's gone for a great response here. So I did share at the beginning of my first slide, I have dyslexia, which challenges myself to read long statements and sentences in the chat function. Usually that's why I have Laura working with me, who's on this call, who can review some of this stuff. But thank you very much for sharing that. Now, what I encourage you to do is have a look through the chat function and see what other people have written. and see how your view compares to theirs. See the similarities, see the differences, because that is part of the challenge. It's not having one particular view. And what we've noticed, myself and Laura, in the work that we've done, when it comes to learning, we've noticed a number of what we might call risks. So often there's a lack of interest from the learner, or we're trying to deliver too much information, so we have cognitive overload. At times there's a lack of relevance. So we as deliverers and designers might perceive that there's great relevance, and there might actually be great relevance, but to the learner, it might not feel that way. And also when we're transmitting or sharing or sort of gathering thoughts from people, we're noticing there's errors in thinking. Their interpretation of things isn't as we like it to be, or as we expected it to be. Sometimes we're guilty of sharing things in poorly organized ways. And also we have to acknowledge that forgetting and trace decay occurs. So we do forget a lot of the things we engage with. And there's a lack of agency. So even though I've been on a program, I've had some learning, I've experienced something, and I have perhaps been given the skill set, I might not believe in myself or have the opportunity to practice. So I have a lack of agency and a lack of confidence to go and practice. These probably fed into some of the thinking that was in the chat function. And there was many more things that are all owned by yourselves. But this is what we noticed were common items coming up when we were thinking about the risks to learning. So this brings us to our first truth. Our first truth was around forgiveness, and it's acknowledging that all learning experiences are flawed. But that doesn't mean they're bad. That just means there are a number of things that we need to consider in terms of design and development. And why is learning flawed? Well, learning's flawed because it's a wicked problem. Now, wicked problems are an actual thing. I never knew they were. I went away and did some research, and I realized actually this is not just me making up some phrasing. I must have heard it at some point and thought I came up with it, but it's not. It's somebody else's work. So what we have here is an illustration of what defines or helps to try and conjure what is a wicked problem, or what makes a wicked problem. And it's based on this work here by Alfred and Head. So we see on the vertical axis the increasing complexity of a problem, and the horizontal axis the increasing difficulty in terms of stakeholders and people that are involved in it. Now, when we're talking about simple or tame problems, there's often quite clear solutions and quite cooperative people in terms of we all after the same thing. So what we find is there's one clear perspective, and the collaborators are getting along with each other, choosing to buy into each other's ways. The reality is these are far and few between. There are less of them in terms of the learning context. So this is a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. Whereas when we think about wicked problems, neither the problem nor the solution can be clear. We can't always articulate the problem in a consistent way that everybody kind of like buys into. And also the multiple parties might have conflicting views as to what the learning is there for and how it should work and what it should do and how we measure it. So what we find is there is unclear perspectives, and many of them, but equally there are multiple parties, multiple conflicting collaborators, which means learning is a wicked problem. So just wanted to show you this next slide because it gives you the context of all the other kind of ways that we might define or describe problems. I won't spend a great deal of time on this slide. It's more you can watch it back and have a look at it. So what is a wicked problem? What is it made up of? What are its component parts? Well, it's based on some work by Rittel and Weber. So wicked problems have a number of items. I think it's about 10 that'll come through now. So there's no definitive formula to learning. There are multiple explanations as to what it is. Essentially, it's quite unique in terms of every learner has their own starting point. There's no exhaustive set of solutions. So there are multiple ways to approach it in terms of that. Solutions are not true or false. We don't have a win or lose situation in learning. It's how successful has it been and to what degree and why and how. You have no right to be wrong. So often like it has to be proven to be successful, but we're not always in that situation. Some of the things we put in place when it comes to wicked problems lead to irreversible actions, like policies that are put in place can change things for a negative impact upon systems and people, and we have to work hard to work back from that. There is no stopping rule, so learning is ongoing. There's no ultimate test of the solution. So how successful, again, has it been? The test isn't finite. And every problem may be the symptom of another problem. So the way people approach learning and how they engage with it, and if they don't engage with it very well, might not be to do with the actual solution you've put in place. It might be something to do with something that occurred prior to that that's not related to what you're doing. And what makes it even worse is these are all interlinked. So there's a variety of things at play here. So I'm going to challenge you now. This is the breakout bit, so be ready to meet new people. What I'm going to ask of you is to consider this question. What is learning? I'm just going to give you about 4 or 5 minutes in a breakout room, so it should be enough time for 3 of you to share 1 or 2 views on what you believe learning to be. We're going to use a strategy called think, share, pair. So the idea is I'm going to be quiet for a moment and allow you to think about your answer to this. Again, so you're not influenced by other people, it's your perspective. And then when you get into the breakout room, I want you to just simply introduce yourselves and then share what you believe learning is. And see how many of those we go through before the time is up. So just give you 30 seconds now to consider your own response to what is learning. Welcome back, people, or new people. I see that people joining this call partway through, so I appreciate you're picking up halfway through some delivery, and hopefully we can keep you on board. But I think we get most people rejoining now, so we'll just give them 1 more moment. There we go. Welcome back, everybody. Now, hopefully you had a fruitful conversation. It might have been silent for some of you because you were in there on your own. Or you might have been surprised by the idea that you were with somebody and you didn't expect this to be an interactive conversational session. So appreciate that that's an unexpected thing. What I'd like to do now is just get some responses in the chat function again. So just some reflections in terms of that response. What is learning? It can be 1 word, 1 line, a phrase. Just take some time in the chat function. What is learning? That's what we're looking for. Oh, there we go. Annabelle is opportunity. Yes. Let's have a look. I need to open that. We crossed over between seeking information, knowledge, and being on a personal journey yet. Applicability, gaining understanding and skills. These are good. Skills, knowledge, experience. A chance to be curious. Craig, loving that. Sean, motivations. They're very much involved in learning. Again, take some time to have a reflection. Look further up the chat and see what other people are writing. See what reflections they're having. How similar, how different. Because I wouldn't say any of this is wrong. I would just say it's perspective. And therein lies, again, one of our challenges around describing learning, working with learning, and trying to create great learning. So I'm going to take us back into the slide deck, but keep those thoughts coming. All right. Again, thumbs up, hopefully, that you can see my presentation, and that will just help. Yes, thank you, Warwick. Brilliant. Okay, so if we take us back to this diagram, wicked learning and learning as a wicked problem, and this interactive kind of like multiple dimension thing. If you just take one area, learning has there's no definitive formula. Learning is perceived differently. I've asked you one question. You're all quite intellectual individuals working quite hard in this space, and you've come back with a variety of correct answers. We wouldn't challenge many of them. And that's where we have, I suppose, our own challenge as an industry to try and create great learning experiences, to try and understand that variety. And therefore, there is the wickedness associated. Now, just to give you some context, the reason that there's no definitive formula and learning is perceived differently is because there are many, many plausible theories. And I wasn't aware of this 15, 20 years ago. I went on a 2-day workshop that was called the Coach Educator Training. For those who don't know, I'm from the sporting context. And I was shared one model. It was Combs' learning theory or cycle of learning. And I was under the impression that was the theory of learning. And that's all I needed to really know and understand. And I would be fine as an educator. Then somebody turned up at my workplace with this image. Now, you might not be able to read it because it's quite small, and I don't have the original. It's a photo of a photo of a photo. But this, at that point in time, and this was probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago, was a a display of all the plausible theories related to learning that looked at things from educational perspective to philosophical perspective, from a point of view of psychology, and it listed all the key theorists in that space and what their views were. And it blew my mind. For a long time, it overwhelmed me and made me kind of like question and wonder whether or not I could actually work in this space, because there was so much to consider. So with that in mind, for a long time, I spent, I suppose, what you might call being in the wilderness, and just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it would stay. I'm going to take you forward in a bit to show you what gave me clarity, but just for the understanding again, watching this video back, I thought the next slide might just give you a better sense of how we can look at each of these 10 wicked elements of learning. So yes, learning is perceived differently. There are multiple approaches to solutions. Individual difference comes in. Continually emerging research is out there. It's evaluated differently based on its effectiveness. You are the accountable person, the designer. You have a lasting negative effect if you get it wrong. Learning is never complete, and it's truly difficult to measure where people are at and what success looks like. And a lot of the existing problems that you might be noticing might be caused by somebody else. They might need addressing before you can go forward with learning. So I'm not going to tackle all of these pieces. I just wanted to go, and tackle this one, learning perceived differently in this context, because we only have a short amount of time. So what's helped me? So working with the wonderful Laura, we started to create a model, and this gave us an awareness, the second truth. We can only act on what we know. So the second truth is the model ASRI that we've created to help us design and develop products for other people. It just gave us a sense check. Now, we never intended to design it to be sold. We never intended to design it for other people to use necessarily. We just sat down and went, how do we make our own process better? How do we make our own designing better? And then only through creating it, we decided just to share it with people. So I'm going to give you a bit of insight into the model and just a part of it, because again, we only have a short period of time. So you remember these risks, lack of interest, lack of relevance, poorly organized information, lack of agency, lack of confidence, all of those. Well, we said, well, what can we do about these? How can we trust these? And we came up with 4 areas that we thought could actually look into these and do something with them. So these 4 areas were attention. How are we managing attention and maintaining it? How are we making sure that people make sense of the information we provide? How are we doing things around retention, making sure that once they've been exposed to it, they can actually retain what's been shared? And then the internalization piece is giving them the confidence and ability to go and change their practice, move forward with stuff. It becomes a behavior change. Now, we didn't just randomly throw those words out there. We did a lot of research and decided to hang our hat on a number of theories. So this next slide gives you those 8 core theories that we align with when we're building any of our products. So in terms of attention, it's motivation theory and cognitive load. Sense making is about perception and schema. Retention is about memory models and encoding, and also forgetting and retrieval. And in terms of internalization, we're looking at things like self-directed learners and agency and deliberate practice, and how that relates to neuroplasticity. So we're just going to show you the first part of this attention piece. My question to you is, how are you communicating the value of your learning and development to your learners? Answers in the chat. Just take a moment, and it could be one word, one phrase, but how are you communicating the value of something? And I need to switch screens so I can see where it's coming through. Now imagine people. Yes, there we go. What's in it for me statements. Brilliant, Kathleen. Yeah, because people need to understand that they're going to gain something from it that might help them go forward, might help them develop something, might give them some time back, might make things more efficient. Let's have some more, Craig. How does this make you feel? Yes, so we're connecting with the more emotive side of people. What can they actually get out of learning in their real lives? Now that can be more and more important these days. Is we're spending time on stuff. We want to know it has actual value, not just in our working day, but in our real life. Benefit of learning. You might have come across the idea of value proposition. That's this piece. We're trying to look at how we're understanding the challenge and problems of our learners and how we're presenting it in a value way. What value is this? Thank you very much for those people who have been contributing some words. So this relates to self-determination theory, the first of our theories that we hang our hat on. Now, self-determination theory talks to three things: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These are key drivers that motivate most of, not all of, our behavior. So does the learning give me autonomy? Does it allow me a choice as I journey through it, and a better choice of journey once I've completed it? Does the learning allow me to feel a sense of competence, mastery, an ability to feel clever to some degree? And does the learning relate to the things that are important to me? Does it connect with my purpose? So when we're designing learning, as much as we might be trying to create some operational thing or some health and safety thing, or even something more kind of experiential, we need to be thinking, where's our autonomy? Where's our competence? Where's our relatedness? If that's not built in, the motivation for people to maintain interest drops. A second theory is cognitive load. It refers to the amount of information our working memory can process at any given time. You've been on this call for 27 minutes. I've shared quite a bit of information with you, and your working memory is trying to now work out what's most relevant and what can I hold on to. So we have to think about pace and volume. How much am I sharing? How quickly am I sharing it? And are you gaining a level of understanding with it? Now, to make the most of any delivery in terms of cognitive load, there's some things we can think about. And this is just from one angle, presentation, for example. So what can we do? In terms of presentation, we can make things feel easy to follow. In terms of topic difficulty, we can make them have a sense of accessibility. I can actually attack this challenge. And we can make them feel familiar. The more familiar something feels to learners, the more likely they will engage with it. So some strategies you can put in place: reduce distraction, have less stuff there, manage the complexity of a task by making there's an ability to increase the challenge, but also decrease it. And in terms of task relevance, consider what this means to them in terms of what they really already know about this topic, so it feels familiar, but also its future value, how I can use it in the future. If we can tackle those things, when their motivation starts to drop and we revisit some of this stuff, it in theory should pick up again, because they can see, I can do this, it's for me, and it's going to help me get to where I need to get to. So there is a way. There is a way to do something. And this is the third rule, or the third truth: action. Now we know we can act. So I just want to share the final part of our model. So ask just one question of yourself in your future delivery, and you should, in theory, change for the better the products that you create. So we have 8 questions. And all I'm suggesting now is you take some time to look at these 8 questions in relation to the theories, because we've done the legwork, and go, which is the question that you might ask yourself when you're designing your learning in the future? I'm going to close it there to allow some time for anybody to ask any questions. And whilst people are thinking about questions, there might be some other people that are willing to share in the chat function one of the questions that they're going to ask themselves when they're designing their learning. So if it's attention, are you going to focus more on how do you hook your learners with lines of value-based statements? Or are you going to think more about managing the load by the display and thinking about complexity? In terms of sense making, are you looking at space for personal meaning, or checking an accurate understanding? Or are you going to focus on making things memorable, or creating space for forgetting? Are you looking at internalization, which is about effective feedback, feedback that's valuable and helps, or creating these test opportunities to practice what we've learned? I've been Kurt Lindley. You've been wonderful. Thank you very much for your time and energy. I appreciate all of kind of the input that's been given here.